I was 16 years old when I lost my best friend. Not to distance, not to a fight, to intimacy, to playful, experimental teenage fooling around. She cut me out of her life completely, told me to never speak to her again. Why? Because we were both girls. And that was not only wrong to her, it also made me dangerous. I didn't revisit the idea that I might be attracted to women for almost a decade after that. I had learned in the most devastating way possible that those secret thoughts and feelings could cost me the people that I loved the most. And so I did what a lot of us do. I put it away. I got a boyfriend. I got married. I tried to want sex with my wonderful husband. I read books, went on a second honeymoon. I tried to make my body respond the way I thought it was supposed to. Okay. And I spent years thinking that something was wrong with me. Turns out nothing was wrong with me, but there was something wrong. And today I want to tell you the story of what I figured out, not just about queerness, but about identity itself, about what it means to keep becoming, about the freedom that is available to us when we stop trying to be a fixed thing and start trusting that process of becoming. So, to you who is or who has ever experienced the not knowing of who you are, or the figuring out of how you feel, or finding out where you belong, baby, this episode is for you. Welcome to another Catalyst Conversation for a Relationship Revolution. Here, we challenge the unquestioned assumptions about love, life, and leadership, disrupt the patterns that have been keeping you stuck, and reveal the truths that no one has told you. Here, we activate new ways of leading relationships consciously, courageously, differently, and dare I say, better, so that you can have the kinds of relationships and life that most people only dream of. I'm so glad you're here for this one, especially. You ready? Let's get into it. So, we are kicking off the month of June 2026 with this episode, and it is our Proud Love series. Here on Catalyst Conversations, every June, I center LGBTQ plus voices and stories, not as a token month. It's not like I'm not also including queer voices the rest of the year. I am. But I do it, I am exclusive about centering queer and trans voices in the month of June, in Pride Month, as an intentional expansion of what love can look like, who gets to have it, and what all of us can learn when we listen to the people who've had to fight the hardest to live and love authentically. These conversations stretch our collective understanding of identity, intimacy, freedom, and the relational journey for every listener, regardless of their orientation. This year, I'm kicking off the Proud Love series with something that I have never done before. I'm telling my own story in full for the first time. This may be my bravest and most vulnerable episode yet. And I'm not doing this because I think that my story is more important than my guest stories. I'm doing it because I think it's important for you all to know who I am and for me to uh, name and claim that I am in this. This month is my month too. I live this. And I think that there's something important about you who are my audience, you who are my support, you who are potential clients in the future, looking maybe to me to help transform your lives and relationships. I want you to hear the story before we move into the rest of the month, before we continue our journey together in these Catalyst Conversations. That said, before I get into the actual story of my identity journeys, let me take a moment to share who I am on the intro bio level for any of you who may be new to me or this work. My name is Dr. Jenny Wallig, and I am an award winning relationship mentor, speaker, author, intuitive guide, and I am proudly a relationship revolutionary. My mission is to revolutionize, to radically change how we think about and go about our relationships, to redefine what it means to love so that we may all experience the true power and possibilities that our relationships have to offer. Because nothing, truly nothing, impacts the quality of our lives more than the quality of our relationships. And we are in relationships everywhere, all the time, no matter what, right? Our relationships are actually the foundation, the cornerstone, the infrastructure of everything else that we are trying to build. But most of us have never learned how to do our relationships well, let alone how to lead them consciously and relationally, especially when they get hard. And much of that work that we have learned not only doesn't work very well, it also keeps us stuck and unhappy. And I'll say all of this applies also to our relationships with ourselves, my friends. This revolution that I am so passionate about is a great global healing through the power of what it really means to love. It is about returning from separation and moving into wholeness. This is a paradigm shift in the way that humanity relates, loves, and leads, starting at our most intimate levels. And in these catalyst conversations, my goal isn't just to give you insight, it is to wake something up within you so that you too may be a part of this revolution. Today, I am going to tell you the story of my relationship with me and my queer identities. Yes, identities. Queer, genderqueer, gray sexual, polyamorous, all of them. And while there are threads to each of those identities, the truth is, as you will hear through my story, that they're all woven together. So, if you're ready to dive into where the gray areas meet the rainbow, then grab a drink, settle in, and let's get into it. So let me start at the beginning. Not the beginning of all my relationships, because I've been in relationships for as long as I can remember, but the beginning of the ones that really, truly shaped my life. As I mentioned earlier, the story starts when I was 16 years old. As a straight A student, yet outwardly rebellious. Okay. I want you to be able to picture me, right? Like I was dressed goth, spiked collar, black lipstick, short, spiky hair, but I was also very girly. And yet I was still, despite being this outward rebel, Marilyn Manson loving, like fuck authority kind of rebel, I was still also the high achieving, perfectionist, super soft and squishy, love everyone me. The duality, for real, you know, the both and the living outside the box that even then, unaware, I was absolutely demonstrating. It is funny. I don't know if you're in the queer community, maybe you get this. If not, maybe you'll get a kick out of it. But many of us in the queer community have like some picture from our past that we look at and we think like, how did I not know? And yeah, those were my senior photos. But I really didn't know. Okay. So anyways, so you have this picture of me, 16 years old, and I was completely, desperately in love with my best friend. Now, I was also obsessed with boys, like embarrassingly obsessed. While my sister was out at parties and doing normal teenage things, I only wanted a boyfriend. And I had one. Like I always had one from I think the age of 13 on, like serial monogamous for most of my life. Okay. And if I broke up with my boyfriend, there was always a few more other guys who I could choose from. So that said, at 16, I was actually pretty serious about the guy that I was with. So I wasn't walking around thinking that I might be gay. That was not even in my frame of reference. Like that was not even a possibility I considered. But there was this girl, my best friend, and something about her. I told myself it was singular, right? She was just special. that is just what, intense friendships feel like. And I'm only attracted to her, which makes it a fluke of our particular soul connection and nothing else. Of course, I was lying to myself, obviously, because if I'm honest, I was looking at other girls too. I had been for a while. But I had a very specific picture in my head of what a gay woman or a lesbian looked like. And despite my short, spiky hair, I didn't think I looked like that. I didn't think I felt like that. I didn't think I acted like that. I wasn't that. So therefore, I couldn't be that. Was not even a consideration, my friends. That was the entire logic. And it wasn't like I was like thinking it through. It just wasn't even a thought. Like I saw the people, very few people who were out and gay. That's what gay looked like. I wasn't it. Even though I had this attraction to my best friend, didn't mean that I was part of the community. Okay. So I was deeply in love with her, right? Had this wild attraction. And one silly night where alcohol was not even involved, she and I were intimate. And after, I was happy as a fucking clam. I was just spinning in circles. I'd gotten to kiss this girl that I loved. I'd gotten to touch her beautiful body and her soft skin. I was on cloud 9 until I wasn't. A day or two later, she showed up at my house to talk to me. And that talk has left scars that still show up in my nervous system today. She told me that she needed to end our friendship because of what we had done together, what had happened. And because for her, in her belief system, what we had done was wrong. And because she believed that being friends with me was dangerous. And her religion told me that supporting our friendship meant she was supporting the devil. And so she made it clear in no uncertain terms that I was to never speak to her again. Don't email her. Don't call her. Don't even look at her in the hallways between classes. I was 16 years old, y'all, and I lost my best friend because of who I was. And so I did what you do when something is too painful to look at, okay? I put it in a box. I closed the lid after crying a whole lot. And I didn't open that acknowledgement of those feelings, of that experience again for almost 7 years. So let's fast forward the clock. 7 years later, I'm 23 years old, and now I'm married to my high school sweetheart. In fact, the guy that I had been dating at the time of the incident with my best friend. And my husband, he is a wonderful man, genuinely. Yet despite how much I loved having sex with him as a teenager, I just couldn't find that same interest anymore. 23, we were 3 years into our marriage. I'd married him when I was just 20 years old. And I didn't know why, like gradually my desire to be intimate with him, like disappeared or what happened, why it went away. In hindsight, I recognize that as a teenager, I was, well, a teenager, right? Like I was going through puberty, and sex was like a super rebellious thing for me to do. So that all tracks. But now here I am in my early 20s, and it feels like something is just shutting down in my body, in my system. And then my mother, one time I was telling her about this, and bless her loving heart, she responds to me by telling me that I need to have sex with my husband or that I was going to lose him. Now, I know she was trying to protect me, right? She meant well. This was coming from her own shit, and it didn't help, right? It made something worse inside of me because I if I wasn't already feeling guilty, and I was, now I was really, really feeling it, really feeling like a not good enough wife, feeling horrible about myself, feeling afraid that I was gonna lose my marriage and I was gonna fail at this relationship thing that I was so passionate about, like, my whole life. So I start doing everything that I can think of to fix it. I pick up books about intimacy and passion, like keeping your marriage alive with sex. He and I go on a second honeymoon. We try toys, novel moves, sexy games. I talk to doctors about my hormone system and what could be happening with me biologically. We had lots of conversations. I am trying so hard to make my body want what I think it is supposed to want and feel, and nothing works. And it starts to really affect my marriage. In fact, my husband became so defeated by that, that he stopped even trying to initiate sex. Why bother, right? Like, ugh, and I felt such shame in that. I once again concluded that there must be something wrong with me, but I couldn't figure out what or how to fix it. And then one day I'm flipping through one of my husband's magazines, wink, wink, and I see a photograph. Two women, nothing sexual, just naked, holding one another, right? The camera view from behind, and these women are like one woman's got her arm around the other, and they're looking out at the ocean, and it was just a beautiful, like, two-page spread, beautiful image, and something in me cracked open. I wanted that. Not the photo, not those women specifically. I wanted what it represented, that tenderness, that ease, that specific quality of being held by someone who, I mean, I didn't even have the words yet. I just knew something in me said, "Yes, I want that," to that picture. And then not long after, I ended up having a dream. It was a dream about being intimate with a woman. And when I woke up, my brain connected a whole bunch of dots that I had been refusing to connect or look at since I was 16. So I came out to my husband as bisexual. I let him know that I wanted to date women to explore this part of my sexuality. And he was genuinely, remarkably wonderful about it. Like, really such a great guy. I've got nothing but positive things to say about that man. And, um, so he supported me, like, "Go figure this out." And so I did, and I started dating a woman. And, side note, here, without even knowing it had a name, my husband and I had opened up our relationship. I mean, I felt so guilty about not being a good wife to him by not giving him sex, that, and he was so kind to me about, my wanting to date girls, that I felt like the only thing that was loving in response that I could do was to encourage him to start dating someone else too. So lo and behold, I think this was 20, so somewhere between 23 and 25, that I started actually dating girls. But and in that area, right, like, of my life, in that chapter of my life, I had taken also my first steps into what I would later learn to call polyamory. But at the time, of course, I had no name for it. I didn't know that was what we were doing. I had no model for any of this. No one in my life had ever done this. I didn't know it existed, any of this. I was just making it the fuck up, right? Following something true and terrifying that I did not know where it was going, but it felt right. It felt like me. And I will add, for about 3 years, again, because of this choice to be who I am, I in in a lot of ways lost my relationship with my mom. I was married still, after all, right? And not only was I dating girls, which in and of itself, like same-sex relations were against what the Bible said was okay, but also I was stepping out on my marriage and my poor, poor husband. So, um, I was, she was scared for me, scared I was gonna go to hell. She disapproved of me. I made her very uncomfortable. I wasn't allowed to talk about my sexual identity. I wasn't allowed to, be affectionate with my partners in front of her for a really long time. Actually, it's probably more than 3 years. It was a long time. Um, that said, I also want to share a side story that my inner rebel says, you got to tell them this, which is that I didn't actually, I don't have a coming out, story about sharing my sexual identity with my mom. Because I didn't just like, "Hey mom, I'm gay," or "I like women," or whatever. It was just I think I was at her house one day and I needed to leave to go on a date with my girlfriend, and I was like, "Okay, I gotta go. I have a date with my girlfriend." And she's like, "What?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm dating this girl." And she's like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, no big deal. My husband and I, blah blah blah." So, like I said, I was a rebel on the outside, and that inner teenage rebellious part of me still delighted in being a shock factor to my mother's life. And I seriously did not think she was going to have such a problem with the truth of who I was. And as you might imagine, after what had happened in high school, her reaction to it was, again, heartbreaking. Yet, I've always found a strength in that inner rebel. She has kept me bold and brave, and uh, now that I have finally reclaimed that part of who I was, this part that I had previously boxed up and shut down, I wasn't about to hide her again, despite how my mom was treating me. So I went on this journey of, girlfriend husband relationship dynamic. Here's the thing, the relationship that I had with this girl was, very messy and toxic, I would say. I was on a constant roller coaster with her, and, my husband had moved during this chapter to another state for his job, and where he moved also happened to be closer to the woman that he was dating, and I could feel us drifting in our relationship, me and my husband, and so I panicked. Since the relationship with the woman I was dating was so unhealthy, I made a decision. I was going to save my marriage. So I moved to Illinois, where my husband was living at the time, and I said out loud to myself, to him, to a community of people online who thought I was nuts, I wouldn't be able to do it, I am done with women. No more. I'm married. I'm going to be with my husband. I'm done. Guess how long that lasted. Yeah. Maybe 5 minutes. No. Okay. So it lasted maybe a week, a month at most. Before I knew it, I was dating another woman. I couldn't not want to be in a relationship with women. I couldn't give them up. I had tried and I couldn't. And that was the story I was telling myself, right? That I just couldn't give up women. And I still had no real interest in sex with my husband, which meant the new dots I was connecting, the new conclusion I was drawing about my identity. I'm not actually bisexual. I'm just a lesbian who has been in denial. Now, actually, it wasn't the seed that I had personally planted. Turns out the woman that I had been dating, someone who had been out of the closet for years, knew herself well, had had tons of relationships with other women. She had actually planted that story in my mind, much like my mom had planted the idea within me that I had to have sex with my husband in order to not lose him. Oh, the brains of our younger selves, right? We are not yet fully sovereign. We are not yet fully anchored in who we are. And frankly, no one really gives us permission to figure that out for ourselves because the world is always telling us, right, who we are, who we're supposed to be. Anyway, I digress. So, anyways, this woman had told me that bisexuality isn't really a thing. And if you're in the bisexual community, if you're in the queer community and you've ever heard that, don't believe that bullshit. Bisexuality is real. Okay? It is. And even within the queer community, for those of you who may not know, that's a story. That folks who claim to be bisexual are just kind of like sitting on a fence and are too afraid to admit what's true for ourselves. What this woman had told me specifically that really got under my skin was that what I had with my husband wasn't a relationship or a marriage, because in order for it to be a relationship or a marriage, there has to be sex. Without those, it's just a friendship, which meant that I am actually a lesbian pretending to be bisexual. By the way, for those of you who don't know, and for those who may believe that a relationship, like a romantic partnered relationship or marriage, has to have sex, no, it fucking doesn't. No, it fucking doesn't. There are plenty of people on the asexual spectrum or within polyamorous relationship dynamics who will tell you that they can and do have perfectly healthy, wonderful, satisfying, fulfilling relationships with one another that feel deeply intimate and connected, that there is no sexual intimacy between them. That's another story. There's another bullshit I want to put aside from our paradigms of what makes a relationship for everybody. Okay. And thank you for listening and hearing me on that little soapbox. Anyways, so her words had taken root. And when I realized that I couldn't give up women, I decided that she must have been right. I must actually be a lesbian. And if I were a lesbian, I couldn't possibly stay married to my husband, despite our love for one another. Remember, I still didn't know that polyamory was a thing. So I came out to him as a lesbian, got a divorce, and then, and this is the part I look back on, one of the many, right, that I look back on with equal parts like tenderness and hilarity. I performed it. I performed lesbian, by which I mean I started dressing and acting the way that I thought a lesbian was supposed to dress and act. So I started dressing more butch. I mean, I'd always had a tomboy side, but now dresses and skirts, bye-bye, no deal, right? Can't wear them. And in my head, like lesbians didn't wear dresses or skirts. Like roll eyes, smack forehead. Okay, so I started dressing more masculine. I started acting more masculine. I started truly performing the role that I thought was lesbian. Okay, yes, I was sheltered and not exposed to hardly any freaking diversity as a teenager or young adult where I grew up. Okay, so I did not have this expanded vision that I now understand, and that many of us understand, because also it was a different time, and gender expression when I was a teenager and young adult was a lot more binary. Fast forward a few years, I meet Calvin. So I was about 27. I think I was 27 when I first met Cal. And so I'd been out and dating women for about 3 years by then. When I first met Cal, he hadn't transitioned yet. So he was presenting as a very butch, uh, I don't even want to call him a lesbian. It was just butch. He was presenting butch. That was the identity. He was a butch. And stop. Okay. So very masculine energy. And then, when I met him, something happened to me that I did not expect. And that really changed the game for me. You know what it was? I had a sex drive again. Like, where the fuck was that hiding? It was very interesting information because even when I was dating other women who I was indeed more attracted to, I still didn't have a sex drive. I had spent years thinking that something was wrong with my body, wrong with me. And I had also concluded that there must be something wrong with my partners because I had a very Hollywood romance informed idea that your partner was supposed to be able to turn you on, right? So, yeah, maybe my body didn't spontaneously want sex, but and if my partners would just learn to initiate better or try harder to turn me on, then probably I would get in the mood. I certainly wanted to want to have more sex, right? And then I met Cal, and it took one kiss, my friends, one kiss that I swear to God, like, I will never forget the way that, like, the universe just, like, opened up, and I was like, "Ah," and I looked up at him breathless after that kiss, and I was like internally, I was like, "What the fuck did you just do to me?" Because my body was on fire, and that kiss, like, woke something up within me that I thought had completely died. Again, I was not fully conscious of what that meant yet. I just knew whatever was happening here, it is real and I wanted more. So that was like the first day that we had met when this happened. And um we started talking on the phone a lot, but we lived long distance and so like the first time we were actually going to spend real time together, me and Cal, was actually going to be in Seattle. We were both living in Wisconsin at the time. But Cal had a job out in Seattle that he invited me to fly out there and spend a weekend with him for. I was like, yeah, I'd never been to Seattle. I want to go. And so I'm packing for the trip and I'm on the phone with him. And I mentioned casually that I wasn't sure which ties to bring because I loved wearing like collared shirts with a tie. Brought out my soft butch side, you know? And also I was a lesbian, that's how lesbians dressed. At least, I wasn't, like, super butch, but I was more masculine. And Cal says very clearly, very sternly, "No ties. You cannot wear ties around me." Whoa, no ties? Seriously? I mean, at first, I was outraged and offended. But then, I mean, this guy, he did something for me that no one else had ever been able to do, and there was something real there, and so if he didn't like ties, then shit, I wasn't gonna wear them. In fact, I was gonna figure out exactly who to be and how to be what Calvin liked so that I did not lose him. Because at the time, he also didn't really want to have a girlfriend or have a real relationship. We were just, dating, but he was dating other people and I was desperate to like hook him. That's a whole other story. So anyway, just like that, I became femme. Hello, skirts and dresses. And listen, as ridiculous and people pleasing as I know this is, I have so much love for my younger versions of self. I also want to say that that shift was a gift to me, right? Even if I swung too far in the direction of femme. I had been performing soft butch, and now I got to put down the part like what didn't quite fit of that and pick up what did of my femininity, right? I started wearing dresses again. I started moving in my body differently. I started experiencing myself differently. And it gave me the opportunity to reclaim the feminine part of myself that I had set aside. And here's what else that connection was teaching me, though again, couldn't name it at the time, is this, and this is super important for me. I wasn't attracted to gender so much as I was attracted to gender queerness, to like women who were masculine, plus energy, because the other women I date were women who looked more masculine than I, but Cal had the energy, the frequency. He had this quality, this what he calls mojo, right? And it did something to my nervous system, to my sexual response system that had little to do with how he was presenting and everything to do with who he was underneath. I was attracted to a soul, and I didn't have language for that yet either. So let's go back to the sex drive thing for a moment, because this is a thread that ran through my entire story, and I need to pull it all the way through it. It's been one of the biggest, one of the hardest, and most painful, and I think one of the least talked about in my identity journeys. So, for years, from my first marriage onward, as I mentioned, I thought something was wrong with my body. I couldn't understand why my desire was so hard to access, why being turned on felt so elusive. And I eventually, as I mentioned, arrived at blaming my partners, thinking that it was their job to flip some switch inside of me so that I could feel turned on or aroused, and they just kept failing how to do it. And it caused a lot of problems in my relationships. It actually nearly ended my second marriage, which interestingly happened after I had met Cal. And so now again, it's like, well, if Cal could do it, why can't you do it? Because I knew it was possible to feel that within me. And so I thought it was her fault. She had just had to learn how to do something different or be something different. And then about 5 years ago, which again, interesting part of the story, if you're tracking this timeline at all, because I know that's twisty, it's weavy. About 5 years ago, which was 6 years into the good chapters of Cal and my relationship, so we've been together now for 11 years, I came across a book, Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski. And that was another like catalyst moment that changed everything for me in my identity journeys. So in that book, Emily Nagoski talks about sexual response systems as having two parts, a gas pedal and a brake. For some people, the gas pedal is very sensitive, like things that are even a little bit sexy get things going, can turn them on. Cal, for example, has a very sensitive gas pedal. And right, and we think about that, like what turns you on, what gets you started, gets you moving. Those are all the things that we typically talk about when it comes to arousal. What's not talked about is the fact that we also have a brake pedal, which is all of the things that tell our nervous system that that is not time to have sex. Sex is not a good idea. It's not safe. And for some people, the brake is very sensitive. For other people, the brake is not very sensitive. So, for example, Calvin, who has a really high sex drive, has a highly sensitive accelerator and a not so sensitive brake. There's not a whole lot that puts pressure on his brake that'll make him not be game for getting down. And I'm like, we are so yin and yang, guys. I am way on the other side of the spectrum where my accelerator is highly insensitive. Like it has to be like perfect circumstances, right? For me to get turned on. And I have a highly sensitive brake. If my feet are cold, if there's a little bit of stress, if if the house is messy, if there's work to be done, and when are those things not real as an adult, especially one who owns a business and as a woman who's also a mother with 4 fucking kids, like, come on. Impossible. But even before I had kids, even before, I was a business owner, these were still like my break still had lots of pressure on it. There was lots of things that I could find to be stressed about and need to do or not feel good or safe about it. I basically need to be on a vacation and having a wonderful time and be about 4 days into the vacation, totally relaxed in order to maybe be under the right conditions for like spontaneous arousal to occur. Okay. Or maybe once a quarter, my hormones will suddenly align and I'll like be like, "Oh, it's a miracle. I desire sex. I want to fuck right now." And then I'll go do that. Wild, right? So that was me. That had always been me. And what Emily Nagoski named that I had not ever realized was that for folks like me, we tend to identify as being on the asexual spectrum. Well, shit. So there's nothing wrong with me. I just happen to be on the asexual spectrum. Because listen, even with Cal, though it took a lot longer for the excitement to fade, but even with Cal, I stopped having a sex drive. I mean, I loved being intimate with him, but I didn't like crave it, want it from a physical desire kind of place. And I spent years, remember, I read this book 5 years ago, 6 years into this relationship with Cal, right? Thinking I was fucking broken because of it. Can you imagine how devastating that was when I thought that like being with him was going to fix this and I was going to finally be able to connect to my body the way I think everybody else gets to connect to their body, where they're like responsive and they get excited and they experience pleasure easily and they want sex, and when their partner initiates they're like, yes please, and their body does what the body's supposed to do in arousal, and mine didn't. And it felt unfair and it felt broken, and I felt like I almost had it with Cal because I had it for like a little while and then shit faded again. Yeah. It's been a while. It's been a ride. It's caused a lot of struggle. It's caused a lot of pain. It's caused a lot of fights. It's caused a lot of finger pointing, shame, grief, guilt, fear, frustration. And honestly, it's still something that comes up for me. It's hard to be different, you know? But it was a relief, is a relief to finally understand what's actually happening, that it's just the way my nervous system is wired. It's also normal, it's just a different variety of normal. So I identify as gray sexual, which is somewhere on the asexual spectrum, because I still can experience desire, want to experience desire, enjoy pleasure, enjoy sex. Cal has his own name for my sexual identity. He calls me calsexual, which I find adorable and honestly, probably pretty accurate. And what I know is this: there is nothing wrong with me, and um, here's something so important that I want you to hear. If any of this is landing for you, my friend, a deeply satisfying, connected, alive sex life is still available to you on the asexual spectrum, or in your relationship, no matter how you might be feeling toward sex and intimacy right now. So I get to enjoy a deeply satisfying, connected, healthy, alive sex life. Cal and I probably enjoy more intimacy and sex than most cisgender heterosexual married couples do. And it's not because I am horny all the time. I stopped waiting to be horny as the indication that I can engage in sexual intimacy. I I choose it. I stop like I stopped waiting for my partner to perform some kind of magic on my body, and I just started showing up for intimacy because I desired the connection of it, the experience of it. I wanted that part of life for my life, and I could choose to have it. I desired Cal's pleasure, his satisfaction, his closeness, and being a part of his experience. And that's enough. It's more than enough. You know, in line with everything else that we teach at Powerful Love, I made the sovereign and conscious choice to lead myself in our sexual relationship toward what I wanted to create. So, horny or not, I still get to enjoy and have a fully active, wonderful, and yes, very pleasurable sex life. I just I just had to stop waiting to feel something that I was like never designed to feel in the same ways that I thought I was supposed to, right? The shoulds of who we're supposed to be, all those stories and narratives and comparisons kept me from my joy. So, somewhere in the middle of all of this, there was another thread that I was following, okay? The gender one. Because I had gone from tomboy to soft butch to femme, and none of them were quite right. Each one was true in some way, and none were like the whole truth. I kept trying on containers in, boxes in some binary-ish fashion. That sounded so Wisconsin, fashion. That's funny. But in those like those boxes of gender, they held some of me, but not all of me. And so I had heard the word genderqueer in my graduate program because I had focused a lot of my studies as I was getting my graduate degree in marriage and family therapy on LGBTQ plus relationships. So I had the language academically, but I didn't claim it for myself until actually just a few years ago at contemporary relationships conference. So now we're talking like 39, 40 years old when I'm realizing this or like claiming this piece of the word for my identity. And so what had happened is I got into a conversation with a woman there who from the outside looked pretty darn feminine, very put together, but she told me that she identified as genderqueer. And I asked her to explain that to me, not the textbook definition, like what it felt like and why she chose that label for herself. And basically what she shared was that that label held all of her, the feminine side, the masculine side, the parts that don't fit neatly into either side. I didn't have to choose. I don't have to perform. I just get to be the whole thing. And once again, something in me said, that one, that's the one that fits me. Genderqueer. She, her, and they, them. Both. All of it. The femme who wears dresses and the soft butch who is reaching for the ties to pack. Right? The soft and the fierce. The one who cries at trees and the one who will absolutely tell you the hard truth that you need to know. The one who can lead powerfully and the one who loves to submit to leadership. I don't personally identify as transgender, which I will name this woman I was talking to also claimed for herself. Personally, I believe that level fits a journey that is distinct from my own, but that's okay. We all get to choose our own labels, friends. Truth is, I do exist outside the gender binary in my own way, and having a word for that, genderqueer, finally felt like coming home to something I'd been carrying my whole life without a real name for it. Okay, last thread. Stay with me. Fast forward, or I suppose now we're rewinding a bit to my 30th birthday. So at this time, I was engaged to marry my former wife. And remember, if you know Cal and my story at all, you know that I had met him before I met her. It did not work out between me and Cal, despite my trying to be everything that he wanted, because I wasn't. So I had met my wife, and we were engaged to get married. So it was my 30th birthday, and for my 30th birthday, which was also my golden birthday, I decided I was going to hike 100 miles of the Appalachian Trail in New England by myself because that's how I roll. And while I was out there, I met a man, like a very cisgender, heterosexual, white man. And I was attracted to him, like genuinely, unmistakably, confusingly attracted to him. Like body on fire. What the fuck is happening to me? Attraction. And I had been, remember, identifying as a lesbian for years at this point. My brain did not know what to do with this information. It kept turning it over, looking at it from different angles, trying to explain it away. And then I stopped and thought, wait, back in high school, I was actually attracted to guys. Like that was real. That wasn't performance. That wasn't confusion. That was real. And this is real too. A whole other part of me that I had locked away that I was reclaiming. My attraction doesn't operate along gender lines. It never did. It just kept trying to fit into categories that were organized by gender when gender isn't what my desire is tracking. And then another piece fell into place because I started thinking about my relationship history, how I had been in perfectly good relationships and still fallen for other people. Right? Like even when I was 16, I was like deeply in love with my boyfriend and deeply in love with my best friend. I I still like despite thinking that something was wrong with me and that it meant that if I was with one person and loved them but then still was attracted to or fell in love with another person, it must mean there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with my relationship with the first person because I shouldn't be attracted, right? But the truth was I I wanted to love more than one person at a time. But I was really honest with myself, right? I still felt throughout my marriages and my partnerships that I had the capacity to love and experience love and relationship with more than one person at the same time. Yet I had spent so many years thinking that something was wrong with me too for that. Thankfully, by the time I was out on the Appalachian Trail, I had come across the word polyamorous. And it was like a key turning. I'm not broken. I'm fucking polyamorous. This is my relational orientation. This is how I am wired relationally. And the orientation label, I'd been bi, then lesbian, then trying to make lesbian fit, even when it kept not working, right? Where do I put this attraction to a man? But now, because of my education, I knew enough about queer theory to understand queer is an umbrella. The word queer doesn't require a precise definition. It stays in the gray, flexible, open to however it needs to be defined. I don't have to pin down exactly what I'm attracted to or in what proportion or under what conditions. I just get to be queer. Expansive, undefined, free. And that finally felt like coming home to myself for reals. So here's what I want you to take away from this story. There's 4 threads here: my sexual orientation, my gender identity, my relational orientation, my sexuality. And every single one of them evolved. Every single one of them had chapters where I was certain I'd figured it out. And then life handed me new information and I had to update my understanding of myself. And at every single turn, my first instinct was something is wrong with me. Something is wrong with me for feeling this way about a girl. Something's wrong with me for not wanting to have sex. Something is wrong with me for wanting to be with more than one person. Something is wrong with me for not fitting the category that I chose. Nothing was wrong with me. What was wrong was all of the shoulds, all of the stories, the lack of permission to figure it out, to flow, to change, the cultural context I was living in. The fact that I didn't have the language, I didn't have a paradigm for any of these possibilities for who I could be. And I hadn't yet understood that identity is not a destination. It's not something you figure out once and then report back on, tell everybody what it is, right? Your identity is a living, breathing, evolving thing. It is something you keep becoming. Listen, I would not have learned who the fuck I am had it not been for every single one of these versions of me. The 16-year-old who couldn't name what she felt, she taught me that being unseen doesn't mean you're not there. The 20-something who saw a photograph and cracked open, she taught me that the body knows the truth before the mind is ready to hear it. The woman who performed butch and then performed femme and then finally just stopped performing, she taught me the cost of trying to wear an identity like a costume and the relief that comes when we take it off. The one who thought that she was broken in bed for 15 years and then found out she just had heavy breaks. She taught me about the asexual spectrum and the beauty of choosing intimacy from sovereignty and connection rather than a desire for sex. And the one on the Appalachian Trail who fell for a cisgender man and had to completely reassemble her own understanding of desire, she taught me that my attraction was never about gender at all. It was always about the soul. Every version was necessary. Every version was right, even the ones that didn't last. And here's what I want every person watching or listening to this to walk away with, queer or not, partnered or still figuring it out. Our identities are not fixed, stable, finished things that we figure out and then report back on. They're not. They are living things. Again, they get to change. We get to change. And the changing is not evidence that we were wrong before. The changing is how we become who we actually are. And ironically, right now, today, my life looks from the outside pretty cisgender, heterosexual, and monogamous. I'm with Cal. We're not dating anyone else. I present fairly femme. My queer identity doesn't always show up visibly, though I did get this sweet haircut. And that's okay. My identity is not determined by what other people can see. It's determined by who I know myself to be. And I get to keep knowing. I get to keep becoming. And so do you. Listen, if this episode moved you, and I would be shocked if it didn't, I want you to do something for me right now. Will you subscribe to the Relationship Revolution a Relationship Revolutionary podcast wherever you listen to podcasts? Leave me a review. Share this episode with one woman or person who you know needs to hear it. Your word of mouth is what gets this conversation into rooms it hasn't been yet, and I couldn't put it in without you. The word of mouth from trusted people like yourself is so essential to my messages reaching the people who need it. Now, before we close, I want to tell you about 2 ways that Cal and I can support you. The first is completely free. I'm hosting a masterclass called How to Get Your Partner to Finally Show Up the Way That You've Been Asking Without Burning Yourself Out Trying to Make It Happen. Yes, the title is long. I don't care. Every word is doing an important job. This masterclass isn't a webinar, okay? It's not a tip session. This is an identity activation where we engage, we shift something real, and you walk away with a genuine new understanding of how to own your power and move your relationship forward regardless of what your partner is or is not doing right now. If you have been efforting, asking, explaining, advocating, trying everything you know, and still not getting the partnership you deserve, this masterclass was made for you. The link to register is in the description. And if you know you're ready for something deeper, I want to tell you about the third path. This is my 6-week program for the woman or person who wants to stay in their relationship and change everything. Not by waiting for their partner to change first, but by learning how to stay in your sovereignty, your voice, and your power, and approach your relationship consciously, effectively, and with less energy than anything you've been putting out so far. The third path program is normally $2,222. And for the entire month of June, if you identify as a member of the two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, plus community, you get to access the full 6-week program for just $555. Just use the code PRIDE555 at your checkout. I'm going to take your word that you belong. This is my way of reducing the barriers to our community to getting the support that we all deserve. That link too is in the description. And truly, you deserve all the love and relational joy that you have ever dreamed of. Every bit of it. Let's build something beautiful together for your life. Now, that brings us to the end of this episode. I just want to close by saying that we are in a relationship revolution, my friends. A great global healing through love, an opportunity to return from separation and into wholeness. And it starts here in conversations like this one, in the willingness to be seen, in the courage to keep becoming.